19 minutes before 9 here on Morning Live. The past week has seen a few events happen in and around the African continent. Just 2 days ago, South Sudan adversaries signed a peace deal and Shabaab militants seized 2 towns in southern Somalia. Well, let's give an overview of what's happening on the continent and some other issues around Africa. We are joined by African analyst Izak Khomo. It's good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. All right, so let's start off our conversation with South Sudan adversaries, the signing of this peace deal. What do you think it means?
Well, it means a lot. But first of all, the peace deal itself, the way it was actually achieved, is it for the first time that you find that the peace deal was achieved through peace enforcing. I mean, conditions were set, the peace deal was not negotiated, it was given to the 2 parties and they had to sign it. Behind that was a threat that sanctions would be imposed on any party that did not sign. So the rebels signed it, Riek Machar signed it, Salva Kiir wanted to spend time over it, but then John Kerry went and talked to him. Museveni went and talked to him and he just signed it. So even the government signed it, but they're not too happy about signing it. So that's a new phase of peace, solving problems on the African continent. Yeah, but again, now that has not actually translated on the ground, whereby you find that there's still fighting taking place.
Yeah, and that's the reality. I mean, you know, we're seeing all these deals being signed, but the people are still suffering. What is the future of South Sudan? What needs to happen there?
Well, a lot needs to happen. I mean, basically what is happening now, the fighting between the 2 parties, is the same split which took place, funny enough that people don't know about that, during the time of the civil war. The rebels, Riek Machar and his militias, they were actually being sponsored by the Sudanese government at that time. So what you find that, basically you find that 2 groups which are fighting for the control of Southern Sudan's resources, which is the oil, which is in the northern southern Sudan. And really what needs to happen, the South Sudan has got to get the thing which is lacking, a very good constitution which is going to constitute the state and the nation state in a way that democracy and regional interests could be actually sort of accommodated. And that is a thing which is outstanding. Yeah,
so these are some of the issues that we really need to do. And I mean, there's so many allegations as to what's happening, and you'll see that the South Sudanese presidency denying Malakal town fell under rebel controls and issues like that. You know, what is happening there? I mean, that's another dimension to look at.
In fact, the fighting is taking place in Unity State and also in Jonglei and Upper Nile. That is the oil-producing area.
Yes.
So now people are really fighting to control those money-spinning regions. And, well, the denial and the counter charges, basically, it actually shows that it shows that things are not right on the ground.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is this, that the United Nations and the AU, they do not have observers on the ground. Once you have a peace deal and you have a ceasefire agreement, you have to get observers on the ground to monitor the peace deal.
Yeah.
Now that is what is lacking.
Yeah, well, it certainly is, because I mean, I don't know how you do monitor it if you don't have people on the ground and you rely on what's being reported back to you. On another angle, though, and still staying with South Sudan, I know there's a lot more other countries we need to focus in on, which I found quite fascinating, is when you do sort of have a look at the biggest news items coming out of South Sudan. One saying that South Sudan FA hopes football will actually bring about peace. This is a big thing. This is a very big thing. I mean, if people are not too sure what we're talking about, but there's been celebrations that greeted a first competitive victory for the world's newest nation.
No,
yeah, there you go. You
the celebrations on both sides. Even the rebels celebrated.
Exactly.
Now, that's the funny thing about the African continent. I mean, I would not even talk about South Sudan. I'll talk about Nigeria. For a long time, Nigeria was a divided country between the north and south. But the Nigerians were united on one thing, the Super Eagles. When the Super Eagles play, the Nigerian identity comes. Both the Northerners and the Southerners support the team.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened to the South Sudanese. They beat Equatorial Guinea, their first win, international win. And that really united the country. The whole country celebrated. And it also happened in Ivory Coast, if you remember. The time when there was a split between Gbagbo's forces and the present Ouattara. Now, that country, it was united by the football team. The football team actually came, played as the Ivorian, and it united the North and the South. And the team, when it played its first international game on home ground, they played it in the North, in the rebel-held area. And that actually sort of helped unite the country.
Yeah, it certainly did. So just to remind you, I mean, as you've heard, Equatorial Guinea, it beat them 1-0. This is South Sudan. So they basically are a FIFA member since 2012. They came in as a qualifier for the 2017 Nations Cup. So let's see what happens on that one. Now let's talk about Liberia, because opposition politicians are eyeing punishment for no-kill fall. What's the issue there? What's going on there now?
Well, Liberia, they're due to go to, well, I would not talk, okay, Liberia, they're due to go to elections.
Yes.
Yeah. Not even go to elections. I mean to say Liberia, basically, it's got a problem with the government which is in power there. I mean to say that they've not been able to deliver on the promises that they actually sort of did. So basically, there's a lot of dissatisfaction in Liberia, and again, something which people are not talking about, but the rural folks are dissatisfied because Liberia has been a victim of African land grab. I think it is a country that suffered most. They reckon that about 44% or 45% of Liberian agricultural land has already been taken over by private interest, and mostly American private interest.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically, things in Liberia, even after the war and with the present president, things are not okay.
Yeah.
But things are really hushed up.
Yeah. Well, look, I think one of the positive stories to come out of Liberia is that the World Health Organization have again declared it Ebola safe, because that was another issue in that country that brought it down severely.
Oh yes, the Ebola issue is a very important thing. The Ebola actually has been controlled in Liberia, but touch wood, as you can see in Sierra Leone and Guinea, where they say that Ebola has been eradicated, and then there are new cases that come up. And again, you find that with the Ebola thing in those West African countries, and many African countries, it's due basically to the running down of the health system. Yeah. I mean to say that I remember Museveni when he was in China some 2-3 months ago, and he talked when the Ebola was at its highest in West Africa, and he talked about the control of Ebola. He said that Ebola cases have appeared in Uganda in several times, but the Ugandan government managed to actually sort of curb them. He thought actually it's going to the international bodies, and that is because they've got a health system which is working and which is on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's the thing which is lacking in West African countries. And again, you get organizations like Oxfam, which is actually accusing the IMF for actually being one of the causes of Ebola, whereby with the structural adjustment programs and the cutting down of government expenditures in things like health and sanitation, I mean to say that that has weakened the health sector. Yeah. And that's also a wake-up call to governments to invest more in things like the health sector, education, things like water reticulations, which are services to the people.
All right. Well, I know there's a lot more to talk about, but we'll have to pull you in to talk about the rest of what's happening around the continent, whether it be upcoming elections that are happening in the Ivory Coast, Somalia as well, Shabaab militants, you name it, there's so much, as well as Burundi. So we'll definitely have you back. Thank you for talking to us, and thanks for focusing in on African issues. This is our African analyst, Izak Khomo, giving us an insight on news around the continent.